Welcome to part two of A Leader's Life. And today we'd like to talk more about how that transactional connection can put you into a waste pit. And I love this picture here. It's a picture of a woman on a very destitute area, like the moon, where there all she is holding on to is her heart, and you see just the vivid pictures of others in the background, and the wind is blowing. And I can tell you, Dana, I have felt that way. I have felt that way as I navigated transactional connections.
Mhm.
It leaves you feeling a very large gap in where you are versus others.
Yeah. Yeah. It can feel very lonely to be able to see, like you describe in this picture, other people interacting and even people around you, and then still feeling like there isn't a place for you to connect personally. And I've had seasons of that myself.
Yeah. So we want to talk about this in detail, giving you some examples and giving you some elements of hope for breakthrough. Because when we not only recognize ourselves in transactional connections, we can also acknowledge, and then we can find a way forward and across a bridge into wonderful transactions that can be relational. And
Mhm.
that's where we want to take you today.
Mhm.
So, as we're looking at the transactional wasteland, we want to talk about the areas of burying your core values. That's the essence that Dana and I have come to understand is at the very center of our being, our identity, some would say it's called,
Mhm.
but it's the essence of who we are, not necessarily what we do, but who we are.
Mhm.
Maybe not even our skills, right,
Right.
Dana?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that version of you that is the most authentic. When you feel free to be you, when you feel that you can just express yourself without wondering about performance, without wondering about rejection, that's your authentic self. And that's the connection with yourself that is going to feel the most fulfilling. When
Mm.
we will learn how to do that, how to connect to our true self, and not a false version, but just to really connect and be our true self. So much more joy in life. We feel a space of contributing. We feel a space of connection through the true self. It's very hard to connect to someone else with a false version of yourself.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this in the marketplace as well as in leadership with ministries. And we've also experienced some of this ourselves as we've worked with others and in our lives. So we want to share how that promoting ourselves from a place of not being able to share with the needs of another person is another indicator. Now, when we talk about the element of fruit, I want to further explain because this is something that you'll hear often in the work that we do in prayer ministry, and that is fruit. And that doesn't mean that it's something that's all of a sudden.
Mhm.
It's a pattern. It's developed over time. It's matured, and some of
Mhm.
it can be very stinky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we are promoting ourselves instead of sharing in the needs of other people, that can be a place where transactional connections are at the prime and the center of the existence. Do you have an example of that that you could give us, Dana?
Sure. Yeah. I often hear people as they tell their story and their life experience of this fruit, this pattern that kind of keeps showing up. And it often has a common ground of early in life where the person wasn't able to be their true self or where it felt unsafe to be seen. And so they learned to be very transactional in their relationship with their family of origin, to stay safe or to keep people happy or to keep from something bad happening. And so this false version of themselves comes forward. Um, and that's the way that they learn to kind of put themselves out into relationship and out into life. And then later, what we see similarly as later when they're not living in that same home and they're not in those relationships with those people, they're now connecting to a church group or a neighborhood group or a new work environment. And it's a brand new clean slate, yet they find themselves continuing to put forward this false version, unable to really connect to the true self. And when we put the false version forward, guess what happens? They end up experiencing the same type of transactional relationships where it's a performing, it's I'm trying to earn a place or try to, it's this expectation that you're expecting me to be this false version, so I'm going to try really hard, and then you relate to me in that way, and then my heart feels missed. I feel disconnected. I feel like I'm in this wasteland because I'm not connecting truly. Or, circumstances change. Maybe the work teams change, and now I'm not in the transaction. And now, wait, I thought we were friends. I thought, what happened? I thought we had made a connection when really it was through the transaction of what I could offer, what I could give through this false version instead of letting someone really know the true self. So we see where we learn patterns like this
Mhm.
of being transactional, it will continue to follow like that tree that just keeps bearing that fruit. You're like, how can I get a different fruit? Why do I keep finding myself in the same types of relationships?
Mhm. And I wanted to mention that also in our society, we are rewarded.
Yes.
We're rewarded for those educational skills, those promotions, those title changes, those credentials that you've gotten. And so the reward system for transactional connections is real.
Mhm.
And so in the workplace, you can't avoid that.
Mhm.
And this is where we like to bring in the concept of that we're bringing the secular and the sacred together.
Mhm.
Secular and sacred, meaning it is your essence, it is who God has made you to be that is needed in the marketplace today and in that place of leadership in ministry or any organization
Mhm.
that you're a part of.
Mhm.
And I really love how you're blending it together and you're saying that it can be something that long ago, far away, transactions were rewarded. And when we're bringing them forward, then we can't seem to get unstuck from that
Mhm.
place.
Yeah.
I have found that myself as I've gone forward. And we want to talk about that it is something that is not easy to get out of because I know many of our clients have felt
Mhm.
pressured to conform and to perform
Mhm.
and to get it right. And that can be draining on their energy, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you navigate, as you're listening to this conversation, how do you navigate meeting real pressure or real job deadlines? How do you meet those without losing yourself or connection to your true self? That's a place that we want to just explore. And, even in this moment, you could pause this and just kind of ask yourself, what does that look like for me? Is there any place right now, any group that I'm a part of where I feel that pressure to conform and I feel the disconnect from my true self? I don't feel that I'm connecting from my core value and what I can bring into this. I'm feeling pushed back or small. That's a word I used to use a lot. I felt would feel small sometimes when there was a certain type of pressure. So just check in and how that might feel for you.
Well, I hope that you did take some time out to wonder and to consider where transactional connections are still holding you in a stuck place, because it's something that we've all seen. And I next want to point towards an internal framework that we are looking at when we consider fruit and where it shows up in our lives. And that would be within. And
Mhm.
for me, this one is very, very simple. I was rewarded for being a part of our family in a very dysfunctional way. We didn't talk, we didn't tell, we didn't feel.
Mhm.
And we also carried a lot of addictions. As I grew up, I understood that if I was going to connect with other people, it had to look in a certain way,
Mhm.
and it had to be defined as a transaction.
Mm.
Just get out of my space and let me alone because I want to go back to what I was doing. So, what do you want? Type
Mhm.
of thing.
Mm.
And in that, I attracted the same kind of people as I grew up. In fact, I had two marriages that produced that same familiar place of
Mm.
relationship.
Mm.
It was not until my own personal healing that I began to understand the difference between transactional and relational connections
Mhm.
and how very important I was leaving half of myself on the table
Mhm.
and the better half because it was inside me. And so again, we're looking at first inside ourselves.
Mhm.
And I wonder as we look at the fears of every type that can really keep you stuck,
Mhm.
Dana, do you have one or two examples for us again?
Sure. So there can be a common one is fear of failure.
Mm,
Fear of me not getting it right. If I don't get it right in this relationship, or I don't get it right in this job, if I don't get it right in this marriage, what's going to happen? Or I don't get it right in this job, I need that income, or,
mm,
or what about my career? So that fear of failure can turn into, or even really connect to a lie that I am a failure. And that can really drive us to be very transactional, to try to get it right and to be more interested in how you're seeing me, that other person in the relationship, than what's true for myself.
mm.
And so that's one of the ways that that can be very familiar, or that we see a common way that those feelings come up with the fear of failure or anxiety. Anxiety is so common in our culture today, and there's lots of reasons that people attribute to having more anxiety than ever, even though we have more technology and more solutions supposedly to make life easier. We're more anxious than ever, and it's just quite fascinating. And you look again at what drives that anxiety. Why
Yeah,
am I not able to just be at peace with myself,
right.
right? Or at peace with others? It does often come from this type of transactional relationship, not really knowing how to connect. And sometimes I love how you're describing that internal landscape, because it really is a place to look within, is what is driving my train here? What is that motivation? Or what's my why? What am I feeling like is my why in a relationship? And if it has anything to do with trying to make sure I earn my place, that I have a seat, that I don't get rejected, that I don't fail, any of those types of things, or that I have to prove I'm worthy, any of those is going to cause a level of anxiety. Because how do you know when you're there? I mean, you
Good
never
point.
arrive on
Yeah,
that, right? It's
yeah.
it's constant.
Mm, that is so good. And, it can come to the point where you move into compulsions or addictions. And again, I've seen that. And this begins really early in life, oftentimes, where someone that is a child in the home does not get their needs met for whatever reason, whether
Mhm.
that's because something bad was happening or even there was a neglect.
Mhm.
Either way, not having your needs met, you begin to look for how to get them met in some really strong ways that are going to be transactional.
Mhm.
I'll get my need met if I'm used of God. That's a very common one among believers.
Mhm.
And that was a place where I actually didn't even like that word used.
Mhm.
I felt used
Yeah.
when I said that word. And so people would say it like it was a badge, but it to me sounded like a horrible place to be
Mhm.
because it felt like I would be like a commodity, a product,
Mhm.
not a partner in relationship. And
Mhm.
I wanted to be a partner with God as I became a Christian, even though I came from a very dysfunctional home.
Mhm.
So, how do I get there? I thought salvation was going to do it. I thought baptized with water, I'll be all set, but it didn't. And that's because we build some structures.
Mhm.
And those structures become a refuge,
Mhm.
become a way of trying to negotiate life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very common, I'm sure. Maybe you've seen it in other people. I've become aware in my own life of ways that I did that, that structure to self-protect.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
when we were kind of talking about this false version of yourself that you put forward, because that feels safer. And so the structure around that, that way that you, what you share or what you don't share, how vulnerable you are, how far you keep people away. Are you able to be honest and true with yourself? Are you able to be kind to yourself?
Mm,
And to others. Um, Sometimes we put up these walls to protect ourselves, and we do need the walls at times
mm,
to get through hard things. But those structures that we build to protect ourselves, if we don't actively become aware of them and actually take them down, then we will find ourselves in these relationships where we keep people far away. We keep people we stay behind the wall. If you picture like a castle or a fortress, like we stay behind the wall. We've got all these layers of protection. There might even be a moat that you have to cross and wait till I open the bridge for you
that's
to
right.
come in,
Or there
right?
may be some gators
There
in
could
there
be
too.
some gators in there. I mean, it can be like I have to be safe, so I have all this around me, but the very thing that I really want is connection.
Mm,
I don't want to live in the castle by myself. We're
yeah.
not designed to live in that castle by
Mhm.
ourselves, but it can feel that way when we don't know how to take the walls down.
Yeah, and I really can understand this one personally and with many people that we're working with. And so when we're looking at it, how then do we impact and we work with others? Working with others is really a challenge because as we're in that place of a false structure, a structure that is meant to protect us, we'll create some more things just to support our needs,
Mhm.
and we'll keep people at arm's length. I think of it as a privilege when I have a partner, and Dana is my ministry partner, and she has won my heart, and we have a relational connection. And learning that means you have to learn who are safe and who can come in
Mhm.
to that inner place, that place where it's safe to share, it's safe to get it wrong. Because again, that's one of the many ways that we've seen others share with us
Mhm.
that it was a fear of getting it wrong. People would connect with people that they could help.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we have individuals that come and they really want to take their leadership to the next level, but they're attracting some very dependent people, people that just really need them.
Mm.
And that can be a way in which that you're building up your importance and
Mhm.
your framework of being legitimate, being worthy, being enough.
Mhm.
If you need me,
Mhm.
but it's not really healthy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not very healthy. Um, so there's a phrasing that we talk about sometimes in that with rescuing, being a
Oh,
rescuer.
that's true.
And when that sounds really great, it sounds great, and at times we do need to really be rescued. But if you find yourself that you're always the rescuer, that is always your role, we have to kind of check internally again in that internal landscape and how am I seeing myself and why do I feel I'm the one that has to fix everyone else? Why am I the one that is supposed to um, to be the savior, to be the one that comes and does it all. I'll do it. I'll take care of it. I'll meet your needs.
Mm.
And that very person that is wanting to connect and wanting to add value will find themselves in similar relationships with someone that wants to be rescued and keep drawing, like you were describing, these
Mhm.
people, that a type of person that genuinely needs help but is not able to see their own part in it and just wants to be rescued. They just want Molly, is capable. She's wise. She knows answers. So Molly, just fix it. I'm just going to keep coming and you're going to tell me what to do and I'll just keep coming. And that can create this dynamic of the rescuer being enabling someone to stay stuck, to
Yeah,
stay in that place of needing, instead of being able to shift, find their real self, their self where they can add value and begin to be empowered to be who they are.
that is really well put. And one of the areas that we see often is, well, I wanna help them to get through this, and we need to close the chapter on that problem, and, well, God's in charge, really, and giving him that room means knowing just how much that he's asking of us
Mhm.
as we share or we help people to navigate their journey, and then believing in them. Believing in them, that's a key, and then
Mhm.
when we can't believe in their capability to find God's in their situation, it really is speaking to perhaps an area in our lives where we're still not quite trusting
Mhm.
how others are to connect.
Mhm.
So I'd like to ask about the peacekeeping versus the peacemaking. I know there's a difference, and I think
Mhm.
it's in Matthew
Yes.
chapter 5 that gives us what a peacemaker is. And can you share with us, Dana, what is a peacemaker?
Yeah. So the verse talks about being a peacekeeper versus peacemaker, and they can sound similar, but they're actually very different. So, a peacemaker is one who actually connects with their true self, someone who sees the other person and the value of the other person, and is able to connect there, have conversation, work through a situation or conflict, navigate a path forward from the place of seeing one another and seeing who the person is, hearing their voice, hearing their heart in that, and being able to come to a mutual win win situation. Peacemaking is about a win win. Peacekeeping is not a win win.
It's certainly not.
Peacekeeping is, I'm going to win by making this situation smoothed over. We just need to stop fighting, just forgive, get past it, suck up your emotions, and let's just move forward because that's what we're supposed to do. And what happens in peacekeeping is hearts are missed, emotions are missed. The real root of the conflict is missed. It's not solved. It has not been worked out. It's just kind of gotten buried. And we're just smoothing across the surface to get on to the next thing, which again is transactional. We
Mm.
just gotta move past it. Maybe a phrase like don't rock the boat, you know, don't address the elephant in the room. Just keep moving.
And our family does it this way.
Mhm.
And that's why Dana and I do prayer retreats with families because we see this dynamic
Mhm.
all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah, we do. And I know as a young mom, I had 3 children in 4.5 years. So lots of opportunity for conflict. 2 boys and a girl, just a lot of fun interaction. But conflict is part of
Yeah.
life and part of growing up and part of everyone finding who they are. And as a young mom, wanted to honor God, wanted to follow what I understood forgiveness was. So I wanted to teach the kids, and I taught my kids, well, you need to forgive each other. So in those everyday, to feel like sometimes conflict that was constant happen in those moments of we both want the same toy or whatever it is, it would be okay. You apologize to him for what you did. You apologize to her for what you did. I'll take the toy, or now we're going to take turns with the toy. And I just kind of come in, to
Solve
make
it.
peace. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to tell you both how to respond. I'm going to tell you to forgive and then hug and move forward. Neither one of them in that situation really felt like forgiving. Half the time, they didn't even know what they were forgiving. I didn't know as a young mom that it was okay to let there just be a tension, and let's pause with the toy. We're going to put it over here, and let's, have a space to work it out and learn tools to express yourself in healthy ways to actually resolve the conflict and discover what that was going to be. And that was a challenge for me. I was being a peacekeeper mom, just, to just keep things running smoothly. As a mom, you're taking your kids out in public, you're at the restaurant, maybe you're that person that's like, my kids will never act like that. Guess what? They will, because they're people.
Yeah.
And so it's not about this perfect keeping the peace all the time,
Yeah.
but teaching tools to be peacemakers. How much more valuable to give our loved ones, to give the people in our lives a space to be their real self, and to bring their core value forward.
That is so great. And otherwise, they're going to be learning to live by control,
Yeah.
by controlling everything. And then we have adults that feel like they can't control because it is such a chaotic way in our culture today, and they can't see their way out. And I love how that you shared that, Dana, because when we can't see ourselves from another person's view, we're not going to be able to see them in the way God wants them to be viewed.
Mhm.
There is something about having a reflection with another person that helps us learn about ourselves as
Mhm.
well
Mhm.
as the unique differences of that person.
Mhm.
And having different perspectives is going to make good leaders, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know Dana's 3 children are today leaders
Mm.
because of the things that Dana and her husband Corey adopted early on as partnering with leaders that were coming forward in the future.
Mhm.
And I really want to just compliment that. I really bless that I get to know each one
Mhm.
of those children, and they are precious leaders in their own right. And today they're changing the culture and the world. And we'd like to see more and more of that, wouldn't we?
Mhm. Yeah. And I just want to encourage right now anyone that's a parent listening, wherever you are in the parenting journey, whether they are still little and at home or whether they're out and gone, it's not too late to share what you're learning, to share what God might be showing you, to even acknowledge a place where maybe you didn't get it right. And I've had plenty of those conversations with my kids as adults. They're all married now and said, you know what? I learned something recently, and I recognized that when you were at home or the way that we did this, I didn't get that right. And I ask you to forgive
Mhm.
me. And would you like to talk about it? And it's fine if they don't want to, but just kind of giving them a space that we're always growing and learning. None of us is there. There's always a space to keep growing and becoming more like Christ and better connected with ourselves and others.
Oh, that's beautiful. So let's look at the third area, which is when we live in transaction with God, we will find it difficult to connect in a variety of ways with Him. And we see that a lot with our clients and the people that we work with. And we know that leaders, as they are navigating themselves or their corporate world with others, this is also an area where there's a deficit
Mhm.
and where there's that inability not to rest or to be able to take a step back and to trust when times get tough.
Mhm.
That's one that we see often,
Mhm.
as well as being able to receive. And that area of receptivity is a big one.
Mhm.
Can you share with us about that?
Yeah. Being able to receive, sometimes we don't have that.
Mm.
Sometimes the other person in relationship, God, in his communication, we know from scripture that God is always talking. God is a communicator. He is always speaking, but sometimes it's our receiver, right?
Mm.
Like our dial is just not tuned quite in. We got a lot of static going on, or we're not even listening because we think, why would he talk to me?
Mm.
I'm not
Wow.
worthy. I'm
Yeah.
not important enough. I haven't done enough. I'm not a pastor. Maybe we feel like we're just not good enough for God to speak to us.
Mhm.
And that can cause a disconnect with God. And so that ability to receive in relationship, to hear and not just give and do and pour out, that's a one-way conversation. And I find often in conversations, people are doing for God. I can think of several times where people have said, I want to be closer to God. So I signed up for more things at church. I signed
Oh,
up to serve here and
yeah.
serve here, and nothing's wrong with that.
Mm.
But just doing is not relationship.
Yeah.
If I were to come over here to, we're in a house at the moment. If I was to come to this house and just run around doing things and not ever have a conversation with Molly, I would be doing a lot of things and be very tired. I'm like, look, Molly, what I'm doing. And she's really just like, hey, I'd love to have a chat. Can we sit and have a tea? Right. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
connection, and
Yes.
God's the same.
He is, and I adore that, and I think that's one of the practical points for a leader is to have a place to be poured into,
Mhm,
and a place where you can get your cup filled, and how important that is, not only with your vertical time with the Lord and yourself, but having that place where you can give it to yourself with a place of quiet and rest
mhm,
and processing
mhm,
and not having to get everything all set and in order, but being fluid.
mhm,
And believe that what we've seen is that people are more able to see God throughout their whole life journey in different areas,
mhm,
the more that they are able to connect with their way of not being transactional, but relational
mhm,
with God.
mhm,
And that really means being vulnerable
mhm,
in the most distinct ways, saying, hey, you know what, Dana, I'm on a journey.
mhm,
And I love it that you're on a journey with me as well,
mhm,
and that we can respectfully connect with others as we learn to muddle along and know something in part and say, hey, have you got any ideas about this or that? We're all on that journey.
mhm.
And so as we end this part two, we welcome you to stay tuned for part three as we unpack the relational connection.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you have any questions, anything that's coming up in these conversations, anything that you'd love for us to address in a future conversation, or any questions about resources that we might have available, just put a comment in the chat. We'd love to connect with you.